She was small, quiet, and unnoticed by most, just a little black girl passing through a world that often refused to see her. But one unexpected encounter with a wealthy stranger would expose a truth too powerful to ignore. It began with something as simple as a broken car on the side of the road, a moment where kindness should have been enough. Yet, hidden beneath that kindness was a discovery that carried far more weight than anyone imagined. When the millionaire's eyes fell on her hand, everything changed. The symbol she carried, the ring she wore, was not just jewelry. It was a key, a story, a painful reminder of a reality too many pretend doesn't exist. What was this young girl silently carrying, and why did it leave a man of power completely shaken? Her name was Maya. Just 9 years old, she carried a smile that could light up even the darkest days. She lived in a modest neighborhood, where laughter from cracked sidewalks mixed with the hum of passing cars. Most afternoons, she could be found playing with her cousins, her small hands smudged with chalk from hopscotch squares that never seemed to stay straight. To anyone watching, she looked like any other child, innocent, carefree, untouched by the weight of the world. But Maya's world was not as simple as it seemed. She had already learned, far too young, that some people saw her skin before they saw her heart. Her mother often reminded her to be careful, to stay close, to never forget that not everyone would treat her kindly. Still, Maya carried herself with the quiet courage of a child who believed kindness could change anything. That evening, as the sun dipped low and streaks of gold lit up the street, she walked past a shiny Mustang parked awkwardly on the curb. Its hood was up, and beside it stood a man whose clothes, watch, and demeanor screamed wealth. For him, it was just a car problem. For Maya, it was the beginning of something she could never have prepared for. Maya didn't think twice when she noticed the man by the car. He was tall, dressed in clothes that looked freshly pressed, his wrist heavy with a gold watch that caught the last of the sunlight. The Mustang's hood was open, smoke rising in thin curls. He looked frustrated, tapping his phone with no signal and glancing around as if expecting help to appear. For most children, a broken-down luxury car wouldn't mean much. But Maya's father used to work in a garage before his hours were cut, and she had spent afternoons watching him tinker with engines. To her, the sound of a sputtering car wasn't just noise, it was a puzzle. With the boldness only a child could carry, she stepped closer. "Need help?" she asked softly. The man looked down, eyebrows raised. A chuckle slipped out, half amusement, half disbelief. "You? Help me fix this?" His voice carried that tone, sharp at the edges, the kind that told her he didn't really believe in her. Still, Maya nodded, her little hands already reaching for the latch. She didn't see herself as different, just capable. But he did. Reluctantly, he stepped aside, arms crossed. To his surprise, Maya pointed out the problem, a loose connection, one her father had shown her before. With a few careful adjustments, the sputtering eased, and the Mustang roared back to life. The man blinked stunned. For a moment, respect flickered in his eyes. But then, they fell to her hand. That's when everything shifted. On Maya's finger was a small, worn ring. Not fancy, not expensive, just a simple band passed down from her grandmother, a woman who had endured more than the world would ever admit. To Maya, it was love, protection, history. To him, it was something else. His face darkened. "Where'd you get that?" His voice dropped lower, harsher. Maya froze. "It was my grandma's." But he wasn't listening. His gaze narrowed, suspicion carving into his features. To him, it was impossible, a little black girl wearing something that, in his mind, she couldn't possibly deserve. The kindness she had just shown was erased in seconds by the prejudice he carried. He took a step closer. "That ring, it doesn't belong to you, does it?" Maya's heart pounded. She stepped back instinctively, clutching her hand to her chest. The street, moments ago so ordinary, now felt like a stage where she stood accused of something she hadn't done. Before she could respond, the man pulled out his phone again, this time, not to call for help, but to dial the police. Her chest tightened. She tried to explain, tried to speak, but his words cut her off. Stay right there. I'm reporting this. And just like that, the engine's roar became a background to something far more frightening, the sound of fear pressing into her chest. People began to slow down as they walked past, glancing at the scene. Some looked curious, others skeptical. None stepped forward. The sight of a wealthy man pointing to a little black girl was enough to cast silent judgment. Whispers began. Stares burned. Maya wanted to disappear. She wanted her mother. She wanted anyone to believe her. But in those long, agonizing moments, she was made to feel small, powerless, and trapped. Her kindness had turned into her trial. The minutes stretched like hours. She stood frozen, the weight of strangers' eyes on her, the man's voice sharp and accusing as he spoke to the operator. Every word painted her as something she was not. And then sirens. The sound echoed down the street, growing louder with each second. Maya's stomach twisted. She had seen what happened when sirens came for people who looked like her. She had heard the stories, seen the tears, felt the warnings her mother whispered at night. Her pulse quickened. Her hands shook. The ring that once brought her comfort now felt like a chain. As the red and blue lights painted the street, one question hung in the air. Would anyone believe the truth of a little black girl? Or would the world believe the man with the Mustang? The siren screamed louder, until the flashing lights washed over Maya's small frame. The Mustang gleamed beneath the red and blue glow, while she stood trembling, her tiny fingers clutching the ring that had suddenly become a weapon in someone else's story. 2 officers stepped out, their boots heavy against the pavement. The millionaire waved them over, pointing furiously at Maya as though she were some dangerous criminal. His voice carried a certainty that drowned out hers. That ring, she stole it. I caught her with it. Look at her hand. The officer's eyes snapped to her. In that instant, Maya felt the shift, the way suspicion hardened their faces, the way their hands hovered too close to their belts. She wanted to scream, to explain, but the weight of authority pressed down on her chest before she could find the words. Step forward, one officer barked. Her knees nearly buckled. She was 9 years old, barely tall enough to see over the Mustang's hood, yet the command rang out like it was meant for someone dangerous. She took a shaky step, tears welling in her eyes. The man added fuel to the fire. She was snooping around my car. Tried to distract me. Then I saw the ring. That's mine. No way a kid like her has something like that, honestly. The crowd that had gathered nodded silently, some pulling out their phones. But even those recording didn't intervene. They just watched, capturing a little black girl being accused, judged, and cornered before she had a chance to defend herself. Maya's voice finally broke through. It was my grandma's. She gave it to me. Her plea cracked in the night air, raw and desperate. But the officers didn't soften. One of them stepped closer, towering above her. Hands where I can see them. Her tiny hands shook as she lifted them. The ring glistened beneath the flashing lights. In that moment, the world stopped. Maya thought of her grandmother, the woman who had carried stories of resilience, who had endured hatred but still passed down hope in the form of a simple ring. That ring was supposed to protect her, but now it felt like the reason she was standing in the line of fire. The officer reached down, his gloved hand gripping her wrist. The coldness of his touch sent a shiver racing through her. The crowd gasped as if the spectacle had reached its peak. Where's your mother? The other officer demanded. Maya's lips trembled. She's at home. The millionaire scoffed. Home? Or hiding? You think someone like her owns a ring like that? His words dripped with venom, his certainty slicing her innocence apart in front of everyone. Tears blurred Maya's vision. She searched the faces in the crowd, desperate for someone, anyone, to believe her. But all she saw were blank stares, hesitant eyes, and phones raised like shields. The officer tugged at her hand again. Maya whimpered. And then, something inside her broke. No! She cried out, her voice sharper, louder than she had ever dared before. It's mine! It's my grandma's! You don't know me! For the first time, the crowd stirred. A murmur spread. A few lowered their phones. Some exchanged uneasy glances. The weight of her cry pierced the silence, shaking the certainty that had seemed unbreakable. But still, the officer didn't let go. The millionaire's sneer didn't fade. The tension coiled tighter, every second pulling her closer to a moment she might not escape. The night felt endless, the air thick with fear and disbelief. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears, her small body trembling under the weight of injustice. She was trapped, between the flashing lights, the accusing finger, and the disbelief of strangers. And yet, in the darkest moment, her defiance refused to disappear. Her voice, fragile but unbroken, rose again, echoing through the street. "You can take the ring, but you'll never take who I am." The words hung in the air, silencing even the millionaire. The crowd froze, caught between disbelief and recognition of a truth too sharp to ignore. The officer's grip faltered for the briefest second. And in that pause, small, fragile, but undeniable, the story shifted. For a long moment, the world seemed frozen. Maya's words lingered in the night air, fragile, trembling, yet filled with a strength that silenced even the crowd. The officer holding her wrist hesitated, his grip loosening ever so slightly. It wasn't conviction that moved him, but doubt. For the first time, he looked at her not as an accusation, but as a child. Still, the weight of suspicion didn't vanish. The millionaire's glare burned, his certainty unshaken. He muttered angrily under his breath, demanding they do something, before she ran off. To him, the ring was still proof of guilt. To Maya, it was the only connection left to the woman who had taught her dignity, pride, and resilience. At last, the second officer spoke. His voice was firm, but softer than before. "We'll need to confirm her story." And just like that, the power shifted, not in her favor completely, but away from the man who had nearly destroyed her with his accusations. A neighbor stepped forward cautiously, someone who recognized Maya from the block. "That's her grandma's ring. She wears it every day." The words were quiet, but they cracked through the noise like thunder. The crowd stirred. The officers exchanged glances. The millionaire's face tightened, disbelief and frustration flooding his expression. But the truth was out. Maya wasn't a thief. She was a little girl who had been judged, accused, and humiliated, all because of who she was, and what someone believed she could not deserve. The officers let her go. No apology, no kindness, just the absence of their suspicion. To them, the matter was settled. To Maya, the damage was already carved deep. She walked home that night clutching her grandmother's ring tighter than ever before. Her steps were slow, heavy. She wasn't the same girl who had walked past that Mustang with childlike boldness and kindness in her heart. That innocence had been cracked, replaced by a lesson far too cruel for a 9-year-old to learn. Sometimes, the world doesn't see you for who you are. It only sees the color of your skin. And yet, within that pain, a spark remained. Her defiance, her refusal to surrender her identity, had echoed louder than anyone expected. It was a reminder that even in the face of injustice, truth has a voice. But here's the haunting reality. Maya's story is not just Maya's. It is the story of countless children, men, and women who are forced to prove their innocence before they are ever allowed their humanity. It is the story of those who carry symbols of love, rings, names, histories, only to have them turned into evidence against them. Every day, lives are interrupted, dignity stripped away, and innocence questioned simply because of the color of one's skin. And while Maya was able to walk away that night, too many others never do. Her grandmother's ring became more than just jewelry. It became a symbol of survival, of resistance, of memory, and of the heavy truth that racism continues to write into the lives of the innocent. So, what do we do with this story? Do we let it fade into another tale of injustice, forgotten as the world scrolls on? Or do we carry it with us, as a reminder that silence in the face of racism is complicity, and that even the smallest voices, like Maya's, can expose a truth too great to ignore? Because the question isn't just what happened to Maya that night. The question is, how many more times must a child's innocence be shattered before the world finally decides, enough?